everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and this is my book, How to Kill an Addiction, Recovery with God. In this, I have How to Do Recovery God's Way, as well as 20 powerful testimonies of real people who have overcome life-controlling issues with God's help. So I'd love it if you would check it out. So every week, I interview somebody who has overcome a life-controlling issue. And this week, I have two very special guests, Curtis and his beautiful wife, Nancy. Welcome to Voices of Recovery.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So can you just tell our audience a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, I'm a elder and worship leader, and I oversee Celebrate Recovery here at the Potter's House. And background on us is we've been married for 39 years. We have 2 grown children, 3 grandchildren as of right now, and life's fast lane. But we sure enjoy our kids, our grandkids and stuff like that, and we just enjoy life. We like camping. I like to hunt. Share a little bit about yourself.
I'm Nancy, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and a lot of prayer helped us through our journey.
Yes.
And we'll share more with you as we go and answer these questions, and hopefully it can touch somebody out there.
Absolutely. Well, it's always nice to be in person. And so here we are sitting in your office, Curtis, and it's also nice to have a married couple.
Mm-hmm.
Because when one person goes through recovery, especially in a marriage, it affects the spouse and the children and the entire family. So it's really going to be great to hear your perspective, Curtis, as well as yours, Nancy, and the prayers that you prayed for what you were seeing today. So that's awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Curtis, you sent me your testimony,
Mm-hmm.
and it's incredibly powerful. And let's just go ahead and kind of jump in with your early life. And I would like for you to particularly talk about the struggles that both your father and your grandfather had with alcohol.
Okay. Yes, I come from a background where my grandfather was an alcoholic, and I never did get to meet him. He died the month before I was born, so I was told stories about him and so forth. But that carried over to my father later on. Obviously, as I was younger, I didn't realize that at the time and didn't know a lot about it. But as I continued to get older, I have memories, of my father whenever I was probably in that 7, 8, 9-year-old section part of my life where I could tell my mom and dad weren't really getting along, but I knew that there wasn't something wasn't quite right. But
Sure.
Anyway, as I continued to grow older, my dad was that alcoholic, and as you just talked about, affected families and marriages. It affected him and my mom, and it affected me and my sisters. Probably around the 6th grade is when it was really coming to a head, because he would come home drunk all the time. My dad was the type of alcoholic that he would be drunk for like a month at a time.
Wow.
And then he would get sober.
Okay.
But anyway, that's a little bit of a background as far as, and that carried over to me.
Sure.
Eventually.
Well, you wrote in your testimony, Curtis, that you went to a vacation Bible school, or a vacation Bible school, VBS, which is
Sure
summertime.
is.
Those are happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually began a relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
So you did know God,
Yes.
and it sounds like you hated the fact that your dad was drinking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You said that he was like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like when
Absolutely.
he wasn't drinking, he was a great dad. You enjoyed spending time with him. Talk a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah. When he was sober, he was, when you're a little kid like that, sometimes you get idols or sports,
Yeah.
somebody in football or whatever. But my dad was that for me. I just enjoyed being with him so much. He was a lot of fun to be around, but yet whenever he would get to drinking and then get drunk, it changed his personality. He would say bad things to me. He beat on me quite a bit, and that hurt. And as everybody knows, sticks and stones break my bones, but words may never hurt you. That's a lie.
Right.
Because some of the words that he told me back then carried on over until my younger adulthood. that's kind of what I mean by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Two
Sure.
different personalities.
Wow. Okay.
And,
That's tough.
mhm.
So you saw this in him, and you didn't want to be that yourself.
No.
But as oftentimes happens, I can think of a situation with my own dad that I saw in him that I didn't like, but I ended up doing the same thing. So we have that desire not to repeat history.
Yep.
But if we don't have God and His power working in and through us,
No.
we will follow that same pattern.
Absolutely. As I said earlier, gave my life to Jesus whenever I was in the 6th grade. And I had a relationship with Jesus, but as my dad continued to drink and he did terrible things in our family, the hurt that come with that caused me to take that first drink. And then
Okay.
what happens, as many of you know, with an addiction, that just takes you away from reality.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You don't feel the pain anymore.
Right.
But it's always there, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So
Sure.
that's what happened with me. And then it was just a spiral after that. And through the whole process, God was knocking
Yeah.
at my heart the whole time. I just wasn't listening, I was running from God,
Right.
pretty much. So,
I think that's something that is pretty common.
yeah.
We do run from Him, but He doesn't tire in chasing us down.
No,
Amen.
thanks the Lord. Yeah.
So Nancy, at what point do you enter this story with Curtis?
We were a blind date. His best friend and my best friend wanted to go out, but her parents wouldn't let them unless somebody else was with them. So
Okay.
that's how we met. And so we dated for, I don't know,
Well, we-
5 months, 6 months. We got engaged. We were engaged 3 years while I was in college. And then we got married. Then I finished college. And let's see, we were married 3 years before we had Ryan. But the drinking was there, but I didn't realize how impactful it was on
Okay.
him
Mm-hmm.
until our firstborn came and all the responsibilities of everyday life and all
Sure.
of that hits you.
Yeah.
Our kids are 5 years apart, so
Mhm.
by the time the second one came, he was drinking, and I was all alone doing kids and everything. And so, 14 years into the marriage, all of a sudden I was fatigued and tired and
Right.
stressed and needing help.
Sure. At that time, Nancy, did you know the Lord?
Yes,
Okay.
my grandma took me to church when I
Aw.
was little all my life, and my parents would go, but they were those that, Christmas and Easter.
Sure.
My dad drank a lot also, but he was a little bit different alcoholic in the fact that he just would laugh and giggle and fall asleep kind of thing.
Okay.
But growing up for me, I didn't even know what the word codependency was until we started the Celebrate Recovery program, which we'll talk about a little bit.
Sure.
But as a child, I was watching over intoxicated adults most of my growing up years.
Really? Okay.
I grew up here at Lake of the Ozarks, and so
Mhm.
every weekend was just drunk daycare for me because I was having to watch mom. My mom didn't drink, but my dad did.
Okay.
And so when people come over, whatever, the lake kind of thing, so you're dealing with that. So
Sure.
I didn't realize that drinking, until I first met his dad. Then I realized that alcohol can do different things to different people. So,
Okay.
plus I didn't realize what a codependent person was even. So come to find out, I've been a codependent my whole life.
Okay.
Didn't even realize it.
Interesting. Well, can you just kind of explain in your own words what you feel like codependency is?
It's a person who is in a relationship with someone that might have an addiction or a personal struggle,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not really enabling, but yet you kind of are, because you're in that addiction behavior right along with them.
Okay.
And so until you recognize that it's not a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you gotta learn to take care of yourself in the midst of that. But
Absolutely.
you can be codependent and not really even realize it. You think you're helping, or you think you're trying to keep the peace, and you're trying to just
Yeah.
smooth things over, when in actuality, that's not helping.
Okay. That's good. So you said that your dad would be drinking a lot.
Mhm.
So did you think that that was just normal life? Because a lot of times the way we grow up, we just think, well, this is just how it is. Like, dads get drunk on the weekends. This is just life. Was that normal to you, or did you realize that maybe something was wrong?
It
there?
wasn't until years later that I
Okay.
come to kind of go, well, hey, this is not what everybody else's parents do.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought, well, we live here at the lake, that's just what
Right.
everybody does.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until young adult, and then you're, become parents yourself, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like, this isn't, that's not necessarily a healthy way to live.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. So that's helpful for us to kind of see that perspective. But you said that you were a Christian during this time, so I'm sure you're praying, right? You're praying.
Oh.
And the thing is that when you know God, you know what's possible. Like, you know that He can do anything. And so even if you're in a difficult situation, you know that God can transform people. So what was your thought? I mean, eventually I think you kind of got to the point where you'd had enough and you drew a line in the sand, but what were your thoughts at that time, Nancy?
I just was so fatigued and tired. I couldn't do it anymore on my own.
Yeah.
And the prayers weren't at that moment being what I thought answered,
Right.
After his mom had prayed and prayed and prayed, his sisters prayed and prayed and prayed, I prayed. While my grandmother was still alive, she prayed also. So there was lots of prayer there, but we didn't see the outcome of it until I just had to not give up. But at some point, though, I couldn't live like that anymore.
Right.
And I felt like if I'm gonna have to do this by myself, I might as well just be by myself, and then he can just go, that's
Right.
kind of where I was at. And I pretty much told him, either get help or get out.
Right.
Because I couldn't do, I just couldn't do the kids and try to do him at the same
Right.
time. I couldn't handle all that, so.
Yeah. And Curtis, what are you thinking about as you hear Nancy share that? I mean,
Well,
what are your thoughts?
it's just, I do counseling with marriages now, so I look at that, Curtis, and absolutely makes me sad. It makes me very disappointed, because I knew I wasn't doing the right thing, but yet I still did it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing, to make her that unhappy, it broke my heart. Once I can look back and see
Right.
what I did then. So yeah, it's tough. Part of my testimony is she got baptized and I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was out drinking somewhere, and to me that's one of the hardest things I still deal with today.
Yeah.
My wife was getting baptized and I wasn't there, and I can't tell you where I was at or what I was doing.
Right.
So yeah, it hurts.
Mm.
You don't see how somebody can't see,
Yes.
especially if you claim the Lord,
Right.
and you're acting this way.
Right. When we're stuck in a mess, we don't see the pain that we're causing other people. We don't want to see it. It's just all about us and consume with self, as you said. So it is tough to look back on some of the choices we made, but at the same time, we understand God's transforming power, and now you're counseling other people.
Yeah.
And like we talked about earlier, God doesn't waste anything.
Nope.
So He can use those experiences that you've both been through to help other people who are stuck in what seems to be an impossible situation, and you and I both know that there's nothing impossible for God.
Right.
So that's so good. And just as I sit here and think about what you said, Nancy, about everybody's praying. Like Mama's praying and Grandma's praying. Hey, if Grandma's praying, we all know that God really, those go to the top of the list, right? Nana prayers, amen. But, you know, here we are sitting in Curtis's office. You two are celebrating 39 years of marriage together. You have a beautiful family. You know, the prayers were answered.
Yes.
But not in the timing that we want them to be answered. And it's not necessarily because God is delaying, but we have a choice. We have a choice. And that is so important for us to understand, because we can, honestly, we can kind of be mad at God. Like, okay, God, like, what's taking so long? I can't do this anymore. But Curtis had a choice. I had a choice. We all have choices. And so God can definitely work on us, but if we're going to be hard-hearted and hard-headed, it might take a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, even with your dad, you know, and you can talk about that and how things ended very tragically for him. You know, I'm sure that you prayed for him as well.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
you know, he had a choice as well.
Yes. My dad was killed in a car accident whenever I was 21 years old, I think. Is that right? It was, well, we were married. It was later than that. This is 1988, I can tell you the year.
You were 20.
I was way over.
You were 26.
26, so you lose track of time because I'm
Sure.
getting ready to turn 63. So anyway, yeah, I prayed for my dad, and that was a very sad moment because in my testimony, you know, my dad was drinking the night, and if you ever get to hear my testimony, you know, I got an opportunity to be with him for 3 months building our house. It's the best time I ever had with my dad. I cherish it to this day.
Yeah.
But we got done with our house, and then he went on his way, and there's more to that story. But anyway, he came knocking at our door the night before that he had the car accident. He was drunk, and I said, I don't want you here. You're drunk. Leave us alone. Then I got the phone call the next night. He'd been in a car accident. He left for about 4 hours and died. So,
wow.
Yeah, you know, the praise on that is they missed a family of 6 that night, him and his friend, because they could have had a head-on with them.
Wow.
But God took my dad and his friend's life. So, but yeah, as far as praying for my dad, you know, it took me a couple of years to get over that, because there was a time even after he'd gone, I'd gave anything to have a conversation with him drunk. You know, I miss my dad a lot. You know, as hard as it was dealing with him as a drunk, I still missed him. So, and on this side of heaven, sometimes you don't know.
That's right.
Why God does what He does, but when you have a relationship with the Lord, you know He's sovereign, and His plan is perfect.
Right.
So you just have to keep focused that way.
Well, and we back to the choice, right?
Back to the choice.
We have a choice.
Absolutely.
And that's so important to understand, not only for our own lives, but
I wanted to talk about the choice.
Sure.
Because when I forced him to make a choice, sort of, in that setting, then when he actually chose sobriety and counseling, then I had to make a choice on, okay, now this is what you've always wanted.
Right.
You know, and then it was like, well, I don't even know if I like him because I was not used to him in that mindset, you know? And so then I had to make an extreme choice of, well, how are you going to handle that? You know,
that's good.
You ask for these prayers and you pray
for what you ask
for. And then it's like, now I've got to figure out, can I handle that gift, because I didn't know what it was going to be like, you know. It was that little bit element of unknown, because I had only known him pretty much intoxicated, because that's all he'd ever, but he could function and do, I mean, I don't know, I as a codependent person, I didn't understand that part.
Right.
But when he chose to get sober, then I had to kind of go,
okay, now what?
Now, because I'm married, but I'm married to 2 different guys, and this one, I don't know if I even know him.
Wow.
So that was a little hard.
So Nancy, were you surprised that he chose sobriety? I mean,
Yeah.
were you fully expecting him to say, okay, I'm done?
No, because I mean, that night I finally just said, you gotta deal with whatever happens,
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, and can you do it? And I just had to trust that God was gonna take me there, because I couldn't do any more.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think he would. I honestly didn't. And by the next Monday or Tuesday, we were in an office talking to a pastor in counseling that was hard.
Which I didn't want to go to at all, just so
Right,
you know,
right.
at the time.
Wasn't something you were excited about.
Wasn't interested in going and talking to no pastor about marriage problems.
Right.
Who's got the last laugh here? Now look what God's got me doing. Just so you know. I mean,
God has a sense of humor.
Sense of humor. That's
He
what-
really does, and yeah, that's so good. I love that. Well, in your testimony, Curtis, you mentioned that your parents were divorced,
Mhm.
and they actually tried to make it work and got married,
The second time.
and then, things went sideways again.
Mhm.
But how did that affect your decision to stick it out with Nancy? Because I know that the divorce impacted you greatly.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Oh yeah. I was raised thinking, your mom and dad should never get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they got divorced the first time, it was a killer on me. So when they got, and the reason they got divorced because it was drinking, you know what I mean? And then whenever they got married the second time, he quit drinking for a year. So I thought, here we go, man. And this was
Yeah.
part of the time, he helped us with the house.
Right.
But then he made the choice to drink again.
Right.
And so that was really, really hard on me. So I would have to say, not even thinking about it until you just asked that question, that had to be part of my heart of not wanting. When she said either get your stuff together or
Right.
or we're going to get a divorce, I can honestly tell you I didn't want a divorce. You know what I mean? So I had to make that choice. And I
Right.
think basically growing up, as I watched my mom and dad, obviously they didn't have a good marriage. They were married for 20 years and divorced, and so I didn't know how to be a husband
Yeah.
until I got help from this pastor that helped us. So that was a light come on for me, because you talk about it with your friends, you see other people and their parents, back then whenever I was a teenager growing up, and you just I didn't know how to be a spiritual leader. I didn't know how to be a husband. I didn't know how to be a father, to be honest with you,
Right.
because what I had was my background. So once we got counseling, that was a big help for me.
That's so true. And we fall in love and we get married and we just think this is just going to be so easy. We're in love. It's all going to be tiptoeing through the tulips, and yet if we don't have role models, and no criticism to our parents at all, but it's like
not.
People can't give away what they don't have. I say it all the time.
Yeah.
If they don't know, how are they going to teach you?
Yes.
And so it takes God and His Word and
Absolutely.
godly people, godly mentors, counselors, pastors, to teach you how to be a husband and how to be a wife. And I mean, we're still learning, right? But it is just, it's kind of amazing how we enter into marriage and we don't even know how to do it. We
Right.
don't.
I didn't.
So let's talk about like the next parts of the journey where, you're changing, right? And Nancy, what are you thinking at this time? Like, are you thinking, wait, when is the other shoe gonna drop? This isn't gonna last? Or are you thinking, wow, this is amazing, like I'm getting to know the new Curtis?
Well, you go one day at a time,
Yes. Amen.
but he was focusing on God, he was studying, we were praying together for the first time in our marriage.
Big.
Powerful, that's all I can say.
Amen.
That's beyond,
Absolutely.
I can't even tell you how powerful that is.
Yes.
If you don't get anything out of anything we say, learn to pray together.
Absolutely. That's one
Amen.
of those things, counseling.
But then God takes the situation and I couldn't even keep up with him. He was studying his Bible every, I'm like, I don't even know, he's like, well, did you know this?
That's
and he would
awesome.
be telling me, and I kind
love
of was
it.
just hanging on because it's like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's going to happen, but God had control of it.
Yes.
God had us.
Mm.
And I just had to trust that it was going to be okay. And that's doing it every day, doing it daily, and trust each day to Him, because at that point, you learn, you don't do it on your own. He goes ahead of you,
Yes.
and He plans it before you even know it's going to be. And so I had to learn that as we went through that journey, because I laugh and giggle, because who would have thought we'd end up in ministry,
Yeah. It's amazing.
and have been doing that for 20 plus years, and or how long is it? It's been a long
20 plus
time.
years.
Yeah, but anyway, one day at a time. Lots of prayers. Again, but I never gave up. That was the only other thing I wanted to say was, I just,
Which I'm grateful for.
because I could be scared and I could be afraid and like,
Right.
what if he, but I just had to keep going. I mean, I wouldn't, God got me that far,
Yes, you do.
so I had to trust it was gonna be all right.
Yes.
There was a 4-year process.
Yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't just like
just
that.
so you
Like a
know,
week. Okay.
yeah,
No,
that's good.
because I went 2 years and she was still, didn't trust me.
I was a little
Totally.
bit
She was still waiting for
apprehensive.
the old Curtis could show up.
Yeah,
And I remember having some hard talks with the Lord going, man, I'm doing everything I know to do, and she's still not where I would like to see her with me. And just, I think it's important to know, at least that's, and I try to tell couples, as I'm counseling them, she says, I can't erase everything that you did to me. I don't know how long it's gonna take.
Wow.
And then for me, I had to be okay with however long it takes is however long, and for us it took almost 4 years.
Okay.
So I think a lot of couples come in and they hope they can solve a problem with the snap of the fingers,
Yes.
6 months or
Right.
a couple of months or even a year. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. And both of you have to be willing to fight.
Yeah.
Because the results, if you fight, are more than they're awesome. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
right.
worth fighting.
Yes. It's worth fighting for. I feel like that message is for somebody today.
Yeah.
And what Nancy said about really taking things one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's got to be a lot of healing. There's got to be walking through forgiveness and just really connecting with God, and yet you see the fruits of it now. I mean, and if somebody's watching today and says, well, I don't have 4 years.
Yes.
I don't have 4 years to waste. And it's like, no.
Ooh.
What's the alternative? To be in a mess for 4 years?
Yep.
Like, time's gonna pass either way.
Yep.
And so, walking with God, walking it out, is just, like you said, it's worth waiting for, it's worth fighting for. And we see marriages falling apart every day, and the aftermath of that, with kids, and I'm not judging anybody. I've been through a divorce myself, and
Yep.
it was extremely difficult for my children, and it's extremely painful. So, even if you're in a difficult situation, fight with God.
Yes.
Not fight each other. Fight for it with
Yeah.
God. That's critical. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. So you kind of got through that 4 years, and you kind of had that turning point of things were what changed like after the 4 years? Was it just a forgiveness, or was it healing? What was the shift there?
my heart.
Oh, okay.
Because I realized that my joy doesn't come from Him.
Yes. Oh, that's powerful.
And
Yes.
I had to recognize that my joy comes from God, and then get Him off the hook, because I used to try to put it all on Him, that He's why I'm I'm hurt. He's why I'm
Okay.
sad. He's why I'm bummed out, or he, you know, and the day that light bulb went off, and all of a sudden I go, it's not him.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, that's not on him to make me happy.
Amen.
And that's my turning point where it like let a weight of pressure off of me.
That's huge.
It was major.
That's so good, Nancy. I'm glad you said that. Because I think not only in a marriage, when you're married to somebody who is struggling with an addiction, but maybe you have a child who's struggling with an addiction. And it's like, you know, I'm gonna be happy when my kid gets clean. And that's a huge pressure, that's a huge weight. When we say, you know, well, when so-and-so does this or that, or when somebody stops doing this or that, I'm gonna be happy. And when we say, this is what I'm gonna do, I don't know if Curtis is going to fall off the wagon. I don't know if my kid is going to stop using. I don't know if whatever, you know what I mean? But this is what I'm gonna do. And you take your power back, and you know that God is faithful, and you know God is with you. I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna be faithful, he's gonna be there for me, he's never gonna leave or forsake me. That's huge. And when I coach people, I'm a life coach, and that if you can get them to that point where they're responsible for their own happiness, their own choices, and if you come on board, it's great, and if you don't, I love you, but this is what I'm gonna do. That is monumental. And when I asked you about the turning point, I kind of thought it was gonna be more on Curtis. Like, well, here's what Curtis did after 4 years, but it was really something that shifted in you, Nancy.
Yeah, because he'd already done the hard work.
Mm.
His hard part, he'd already walked through. But the weight of me thinking all my happiness and joy was all on him. That was my pivotal time when.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so incredibly good. So at what point did you, I think you heard about Celebrate Recovery, you said in 2008, and then started, so talk about how you got introduced to this ministry, and I know you're heavily involved now, but it's something that's really helping people.
Yeah, in 2008, there was a gentleman that was here at the church that worked here. He introduced it to me, and when he first introduced it to me, because of my background, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was a worship leader at the time, and I was pretty busy, and I said, I haven't got time for it. And as God does in my life, he started going, really? You know, me and God was having these conversations, and I finally said, okay, let me see the information on it. So I got the information on it, and I shared it with her. I thought, wow, this could be pretty powerful. You know, I did my homework, you know, John Baker, you know, did some history on him, you know, Saddleback. I was blessed to go visit up there, but I visited some Celebrate Recoveries here, one in Springfield, probably was the one that really convinced me this is the thing to do. So literally after almost a year, that's what you have to do, get a team together in a year, and then you pray.
A lot of training.
Lots
we went
of
to training and
lots
had
of
to
training.
do some
We went to one-day training
seminar,
courses.
or I call them seminars, but
that's what they still do, I think. I haven't been to one for a while. We'll send people if we can, but it's been a while. But anyway, shared it with here at the church with the pastor at the time. You know, this is what we're going to do. And we opened it up in October of 2009, and this October will be the end of our 12th year. 12th year. You know, so
That's awesome.
seen lives. We've had 172 baptisms, I think, and we didn't start baptisms until 2011, I think it was. But anyway, Celebrate Recovery. It's about hurts, habits, and hang-ups. You know as well as I do, so many people have that baggage that they carry. They're afraid to come walk through the doors of a church.
Right.
And I just let them know, hey, you're not gonna, you can't come in here all cleaned up. God's the one who's gonna clean you up. You know?
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's, and then in the midst of that, been blessed. I'm one of the elders here at the church, then do the worship. So God has just pretty much just blessed my socks off.
He has, and he's he's not wearing socks now. And I've seen him lead worship, and he gets going.
Oh,
and it's
boy, I'm
awesome.
terrible.
It's awesome just to see the joy of the Lord working through you. And, you know, when God has pulled you out of a mess, you just have a level of joy and appreciation because you know where you'd be without him. And it's not pretty.
No.
So, yeah, I love Celebrate Recovery. And you said it was for people with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And guess what? That's pretty much everybody. I don't know anybody who doesn't have a hurt, habit, or hang-up at some point in time. It's not just about addictions to substances, but codependency and just so many things. And it's just such a beautiful community of people who can come together and be real.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, I mean, depending where you go to church, I mean, I've been to a lot of churches, and sometimes we feel like we need to put on a certain kind of air and pretend everything's okay and everything like that. And Celebrate Recovery is kind of like you can be real.
Or take your mask off.
Yes.
That's what we say.
Yeah, that's good.
Just take your mask off, and because everybody, if I ask somebody or ask a group of people, does anybody have any hurts, habits, or hang-ups? And I've had people go, I think I'm doing really good. Celebrate Recovery has a step study that you go through.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, I said, let's go through a step study and you're going to find something.
Right.
You're going to have baggage that you're not going to realize that you had.
Right.
So, yeah, there's always someone on any given. And we're blessed here. We get to do a CR Sunday once a year, and it's all about Celebrate Recovery and letting them know what it's about.
Share with the congregation what the program is and that it is for everybody.
Right.
And,
sure.
And anyway, so
That's good.
yeah.
That's so good. Well, and the testimonies.
And
that's what I love to do.
Gosh.
What we're doing today. We are giving a testimony about how life can transform with Jesus. That's what it's all about. And there's nothing impossible for him. Well, as we kind of wrap up today, I wanted to share something that you said, and I read your testimony here again. And this is a quote from your testimony. You wrote, "It's amazing what God does with our hurts. He can use them to help other people if you let him.
Yep.
Never underestimate what God will do if you just surrender to his plans."
Absolutely.
And that's just so good. I mean, God can take our hurts and the mess and our mistakes and he can weave them into something beautiful, but then in turn help somebody else in a mess, and it just keeps going and going like that. But the key word that I think that is in that quote is surrender.
Surrender.
That's huge.
Yeah. I think in today's culture, surrender means you're weak, not in God's economy.
Right.
Surrender means that you can be strong with him.
Yes.
If you just give up. And, you know, God's got you here for a purpose. You know, because a lot of people come in and, you know, so we go through CR and they say, I don't know what God's got me doing.
Right.
And that's why it's important to be surrounded by other people, because as people watch you, they go, you know what? This is what I see in you. Or you're really good at this or good at that. And then all of a sudden, you kind of figure out what God's got you here for. And then just surrender and let him do it. Don't be afraid. I think some people are afraid of what God will do with their lives sometimes, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? But, oh my gosh, the blessings that you'll receive if you, I'm not saying it's not scary, and you might not want to do things that God, I've been there, still am sometimes. Right. But here's what I know: if I don't surrender to what I feel like God is leading me to do, I know I'm going to miss out on something that's amazing. You know, so it's cool stuff.
Amen. Surrender to his plans, like the person who didn't want to go to counseling and who is now counseling. I love it. That's amazing. Well, I want to give you each an opportunity to just kind of speak to our audience today. And I'm going to start with you, Nancy. Nancy, can you speak to that person watching who is maybe struggling with codependency? Perhaps has a spouse or a child who is suffering from addiction. If you could just encourage that person today, that would be awesome.
Power of prayer. Stay focused on the Lord. And believe it or not, just take care of yourself, because when you do that, then it overflows to them. And my encouragement would be just stay strong in knowing that God has you. You know, have a relationship, get a relationship, learn how to trust Him, learn that He loves you very much, and give it to Him. That's my encouragement.
That is beautiful. And I love what you said. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. That's so important. Curtis, what would you say to the person watching today who is maybe struggling with an addiction like you were? Can you give that person some encouragement today?
Sure. Here's what I'd tell you to do. First of all, you know, as Nancy has said, have a relationship with the Lord. Give your life up to the Lord. He's waiting on it right now, so if you haven't done that, I want to challenge you to ask Him into your life. That's the first thing. And then I probably would say get involved with Celebrate Recovery, or a counselor of some type that's had addiction, is familiar with that.
Right.
I'm going to plug Celebrate Recovery because I know it works.
Mm-hmm.
But there you will find people that have the same problems as you do. If under addiction, they understand what you're going through, and it's a process. And I would say number 3, accountability is one of the biggest factors in Celebrate Recovery and in ministry as far as I'm concerned. I have roughly 10 to 12 guys that literally can go talk to Nancy anytime they want. They can see my telephone, they can get on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I obviously don't want to let the Lord down, but accountability, and these are guys in my life that are not tickling my ears. They are absolutely will tell me the truth and not let me off on something. So that's the biggest thing. And just keep focused, as Nancy said, just absolutely keep focused on the Lord, because God is who will get you through anything, and God is the power that you need in your life, and always surrender to His
Amen.
plan.
Amen. You know, I know that community is a huge part of Celebrate Recovery. That meetings together, having that accountability partner, having mentors is huge. And if somebody's watching tonight and you're feeling isolated, I would highly recommend going to the Celebrate Recovery website.
Yes.
And I will post that here on the Voices of Recovery page so that you can access that, find where meetings are.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people are meeting online.
Yes.
So, you know, with COVID and things
Mhm.
like that, or people just don't have a location close to them, you could still tap in online.
Yes.
and have a community. So
Yes. Yes.
that's awesome. Well, you guys are just a huge blessing, and I've really enjoyed our talk today.
Thank you.
I love your ministry. I love your heart. I love the journey, all the good, bad, and the ugly of it. God doesn't waste anything. And so I just want to bless you and your family and your ministry, and that you'll have the ability to reach people far and wide with this message and other opportunities as well.
Thank you for your ministry also.
Thank you. And I want to thank our audience for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go on their journey with God. And if you're new here, I'd love it if you'd give our page a like or a follow. And if you feel led, please share this message out, because I'm sure there's somebody who needs to hear what Curtis and Nancy had to say today. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Voices of Recovery. Bye-bye.